Alright, YouTube, we've been asked a few times about the proper way to shift an Atlas transfer case and some of the tricks involved and the how-tos, so we put together this little vlog here to kind of go over some of that stuff with you, and we hope it helps you all out. So this would be how you would be sitting in the actual driver's seat.
If your vehicle had a left-hand
drop transfer case, which means left-hand front differential.
And then you can actuate it like this.
So let's maybe go through the positions here from a neutral standpoint.
Neutral. Oops, sorry. That's too high.
And with too high, the powers come in from the transmission.
And just the whole gear chain's turning that keeps everything lubricated. But if you had locking hubs, this front yoke is stationary. Two-wheel drive, the transfer case turns the whole gear train, but none of this is being, none of the front output's being driven. There's no drive on it at all. It's just hanging out. The gears are rotating, but it's splash lubing all the bearing system.
So basically the power flow is coming straight through.
It's engaged, the drive is driven off the collar of this gear and the shift collar itself, so it's driven like that.
So straight through, okay.
And then,
so our next position would be both handles back towards yourself as you're sitting in the driver's seat, and that would be a 4-high position.
So all we've done is slid the collar over the drive gear. So now you have, it's locked together in 4-wheel drive high. And like I said before, you can't disengage the rear wheel drive high with the front wheel drive high in. So
power right now is coming from the transmission in straight out the back, as well as coming across here and then going out the front for a high range position. So in order to get this out of high range 4-wheel drive, we need to disengage
that front lever,
which
puts this back into neutral, but the rear is still engaged. And then to get low range, you need to put the transfer case in neutral first. So both shafts are in neutral.
So nothing's spinning
Nothing's
now.
happening. You can go directly to low front if you want to also. Now, just lining up the synchro dogs. And now the back is just hanging out.
Not spinning anything.
So that gives you your front dig feature. So you can turn the gear train, but the rear yoke isn't moving.
So in the front dig application, your power is coming in from the front here, going to here, coming across, coming over here through the cluster. You can see that here. We got the cluster, which is basically a 2-piece gear, one side larger than the other. So power comes in from the transmission across the small gear here, the larger gear here, back across here, and then out the front.
So if you can see, this rear yoke is stationary.
Okay.
And then you can just slide that in. And
that's now both sticks are as far forward as possible, away from you as you're sitting in the driver's seat.
So that's low range. And you can disconnect either one of these at will. So you can be in low, you can disconnect the front. Like if you're on a hard pack, like say in Moab, there's lots of stretches where it's just perfect traction. You don't need to have 4-wheel drive, but you just hang out in low range. You can just drive around and just grab it when you need it.
Now when people talk about the Atlas getting bound up,
I'll help with that. When people have complained or had made mention of it's bound up, like they're usually in a crossed-up situation where they have, like, for example, a Detroit locker which works on tension to hold it in and out of drive. If you got the front all wedged and you want to disconnect it, you've got this whole drivetrain wound up, so it's fighting itself. Like we'll do it and put it in 4-low right now. And you say you got wanted a front dig, but you got all the weight on the back of the car.
So the tire in the drive shaft is trying to twist the axle in one direction.
You got it driveline doing this, just fighting it. So what I would suggest is kind of try to jockey the vehicle around and then manipulate the lever so you can disconnect the back. Like work it back and forth so you take the load off of the gear train. And it's easier with a stick because you can just bump the clutch a little bit to pop it out. But if you've got an automatic, you need to take it in and out of drive so you're going back and forth with the transmission input, so you'll pop it loose.
Just try and take the opposite bind out of the front and the rear.
Correct.
Because they're trying to spin different directions when the tires have it bound up. Now, as far as shifting, as you're driving it with a manual transmission, if you're going to shift the Atlas, use the clutch, or what's the best way to shift it? If you're going to say I'm in two-wheel drive, high range, and I'm ready to go down into, two-wheel drive, low range, and I have a manual transmission, what's the standard procedure for that?
Slow, dependent upon a gear ratio, but most people are at 3.8 plus gear ratio wise. Slow to almost a crawl, like 2 to 5 miles an hour, because like I said before, if this is a manual transmission, you're going directly from fourth gear to first, and you can't drop your car like that normally. So you just kind of slow down to a crawl, and I bring these, this is too high, bring it down to a crawl, and then just about, like I said, 2 to 5 miles an hour, slow down, get the transfer case into neutral, and then just gently apply pressure until it goes in.
And clutch the transmission?
Yeah, clutch the transmission. And then if you go back down to nothing, jockey the...
Do a little clutch gas.
Yeah, clutch gas. And then, like, if you, for example, you just stop rolling, just keep the transmission in gear, and then jockey the clutch on and off till you get these lined up. If you want to zoom in, once again it's getting this set lined up. If you get all three of these in a row, it'll take a little bit to rotate around. Once it's in neutral here, get these lined up, because now the center hub and the synchronizer are going to rotate in the same manner. Okay. And see, this is floating, so it acts as a brake or an accelerator, depending on which way you're going.
It speeds or slows up the gear to make it match in order to
match
shift,
the teeth right here.
In order to pull the shift collar over the top to lock them together.
So we'll just, there you go. It's easy because this is dissected, but.
And what would be the difference if you had an automatic transmission? How would you operate an Atlas differently in the situation of having a an automatic equipped vehicle?
Similar, but I put the transmission in neutral. I would try to do it a little more quickly, because even though the transmission is in neutral, the whole gear assembly is still turning, so it's going to have a slight drag.
Just from the momentum of the torque converter?
Yeah, there's the whole gear train. There's no brake to stop that from turning. So if it's a newer unit or a brand new unit, sometimes I've had to shut the thing off and then click it and roll it, and it'll click it into gear. But as you get use on it, the brass beds in, and that's usually the case of the issues we've had people having with them. Is we ask them actually how many miles are on it. They'll say 3 trials. Well, that's really not any kind of mileage. They actually need to use it, because we have a Jeep here that's got used relatively regularly, and it just clicks in and out of gear. It boils down to actual use. But there's another thing I'd like to show you too down here. There's these 2 brass plugs. You need a wrench to loosen them, but there's a detent ball and spring. So if you still feel you're having difficulties shifting this thing, it's a brand new unit, you're following what we're talking about here, you can back these off to 1/4 to 1/2 a turn, so it lowers the spring tension on it. And there's an O-ring on there, so it'll compensate for, you won't have oil leak from there. But after a while, ultimately you should tighten it back up. It really boils down to a brake-in usage.
Just until it's got enough miles in it that
it starts to shift nice.
Okay, anything else?
I'll elaborate on the sight tubes here. It's 2 quarts of oil in our standard 2-speed Atlas, and what I recommend is you pour your 2 quarts in, and then whatever angle it ends up being clocked, you mark this with a zip tie so you know where 2 quarts sits.
Well, that wraps it up for the Atlas shifting video. If you have any comments, be sure to leave those below, and make sure you subscribe to us. Check us out online at www.advancedadapters.com. If you have any ideas for any further product demos or anything you'd like to see, make sure you leave it in the comments below, and we'll see what we can do about getting those on and doing a little video for you. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.